Ethan stood rigid, his eyes cold as ice, facing Olivia.
Ethan, please don't.
Olivia, you resorted to extreme measures to force me to come back and see you. Isn't this exactly what you wanted?
Ethan, I just want to see my child, even if it's just for a moment, just one glance. Tears streamed down her small face.
Ethan's heart remained unmoved. He couldn't trust her. This woman, with her venomous heart and deceitful mind.
You're nothing but a criminal. What right do you have to make such unreasonable demands of me?
Olivia's face turned deathly pale, and she shook her head desperately.
Ethan, I didn't harm Sophia, really, you have to believe me.
That incident was an accident, but no matter how much she explained, this man just wouldn't believe her.
Why should I believe you?
2 years ago, she had schemed to climb into his bed while simultaneously cutting the brake lines on Sophia's car, then deliberately lured Sophia to the hotel to witness their entanglement. Sophia never made it to the hotel. Her car lost control and plunged into the river, leaving no trace of her body. And Olivia not only cleared herself of suspicion but also used that night's outcome to force Mr. Johnson to make Ethan marry her.
Olivia, isn't this position as Mrs. Johnson exactly what you wanted? What right do you have to ask for more now?
Olivia forced back her tears.
Ethan, I haven't seen the child even once since he was born. I'm begging you, just let me see him once. I'll do anything you ask. I carried him for 10 months and gave birth to him. I'm his mother.
Her humble plea only made Ethan angrier. He forced her to meet his gaze.
Anything, you say?
Yes, anything, as long as you let me.
After Ethan was satisfied, Olivia was like a shattered porcelain doll, yet she still trembled as she reached out to grasp Ethan's wrist as he buttoned his shirt.
Ethan, please, let me see him just once.
Ethan leaned down and lifted her chin with 2 fingers.
In 10 days, I'll bring him back for the family ceremony.
A spark of hope lit up in Olivia's eyes, but before she could speak, Ethan added,
You can't say you're his mother. Remember that?
It didn't matter, as long as she could see him.
Okay, I remember.
Olivia nodded emphatically. 10 days later, Olivia got up early to prepare. She changed the only 3 outfits in her wardrobe over and over again. Hearing the sound of a car downstairs, she rushed down immediately. At the stairway corner, Mrs. Wang stopped her.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Ethan instructed that you are not allowed downstairs.
Her only right was to stand on the stairs and look at him from afar. Just as Olivia was about to plead, Ethan walked in with the little one in his arms, capturing all her attention. When she had just given birth to this child, she hadn't even seen him before he was taken away. 2 years later, the child had grown so tall, with a faint resemblance to Ethan in his features. His rosy lips were pouting as he whispered something into Ethan's ear. Ethan glanced in her direction, his gaze icy, and carried the child to the ancestral hall. As the housekeeper, Mrs. Wang also had to help in the ancestral hall, so she asked Olivia to return to her room and locked the door before leaving. Olivia knocked on the door for a long time, but no one came to open it. Finally, she looked towards the balcony on the 3rd floor, bit her lip, and walked over. She had to see the child, hold his hand, and look at him face to face. No one could stop her. From the 3rd floor, looking down made Olivia dizzy. She tore the bedsheet into strips and slid down along the railing. The recent days of fasting had weakened her, and as she neared the ground, her hands gave way, causing her to fall hard. Her ankle throbbed with pain, but she had to stifle her cries. She couldn't let Ethan discover her presence. Tiptoeing through the garden, she reached the ancestral hall but found no trace of the child. Growing anxious, she looked around frantically. As she slowly stood up, Mrs. Wang spotted her and hurried over to stop her.
Madam, please go back to your room. If the young master sees you, he won't be happy.
Mrs. Wang, I'm begging you, let me see the child. Just for a minute, please?
Seeing the pitiful look on the woman before her, Mrs. Wang's heart softened for a moment. As a woman herself, she understood the pain of being separated from one's child. But Ethan.
I'm sorry, madam, I really can't take you to see the child. Please go back to your room and don't get me into trouble.
She signaled to the servants nearby, who began to drag Olivia back to the main house.
No, please, let me see him, just let me see him.
Olivia resisted, her hands digging into the ground in a desperate attempt to hold on. The servants ignored her, pulling her back relentlessly. Her nails broke, and red blood seeped into the dark soil, quickly disappearing. They didn't care about Olivia's condition. In the Johnson household, Olivia was just a sinner with the title of Mrs. Johnson. Soon, Olivia was dragged to the front door, covered in dirt, leaving a long trail of blood behind her. As they reached the door, she used all her strength to cling to the threshold, her voice trembling with pain.
Please, please, let me see him.
A young voice suddenly called out.
What are you doing?
Olivia quickly raised her head, tears streaming down her face as she looked at the little boy nearby. The dirt on her face was washed away, leaving streaks of clean skin, making her look even more disheveled.
Baby.
She called out, pushing the servants aside to approach the child, but hesitated when she got close. She saw her reflection in his eyes. She looked a mess. How could she hold him with these bloodied hands? As she hesitated, the chubby little hands already grasped hers, gently blowing on them with concern in his eyes.
Does it hurt? Daddy says blowing on it will make it better.
It doesn't hurt, not at all.
Her hands might not hurt anymore, but her heart ached intensely. Olivia looked at the child before her and slowly smiled.
What's your name?
It was laughable, the child was already 2 years old, and she didn't even know his name. The child opened his mouth to answer, but a cold voice interrupted from behind.
Lucas.
Ethan had arrived. A chill ran down her spine as Olivia stiffly turned to face Ethan's icy gaze, unsure of what to say or explain. Would Ethan forbid her from seeing the child again next time? Lucas ran towards Ethan, wrapping his arms around his leg and looking up.
Daddy, she's hurt. Can you call a doctor to check on her?
It's fine. I didn't tell him anything, just asked his name. Ethan, I.
Before she could finish, Ethan interrupted.
Don't call me that.
The last spark of hope in her heart was ruthlessly extinguished. Olivia's forced smile was bitter as she slowly lowered her head.
Mr. Johnson, please let me talk to him again.
No.
But.
Don't be greedy. This is already the greatest mercy you can get.
Seeing her own child depended on others' mercy. Olivia didn't know whether Ethan was laughable or if she was pitiful. Falling to the ground, she could only watch as Ethan carried Lucas away. Without Lucas's comforting presence, the pain from her wounds overwhelmed her, nearly causing her to faint. Mrs. Wang watched in horror. Such deep wounds, yet Olivia hadn't made a sound. How much endurance did she have? Meanwhile, Ethan had already reached the garden gate with Lucas when he heard Lucas pointing back.
Daddy, look!
Turning his head, he saw the bedsheets hanging down from the third-floor balcony, and a smile involuntarily tugged at his lips. This woman did have some skills. But no, if she really had skills, she wouldn't have ended up so miserable just now, worse than a beggar. A few days of fasting, and now covered in injuries. Did this woman feel uncomfortable if she didn't hurt herself for a day?
Get a doctor to check on her. Keep a close watch, don't let anything else happen.
The servant nodded, surprised. This seemed to be the first time Ethan showed concern for the young mistress. Still puzzled, the servant then heard Ethan's cold voice.
After all, she bears the title of Mrs. Johnson. If she passes away, how would we play?
Leaving this remark, he carried Lucas into the car and left. When Dr. Smith arrived, Olivia was still sitting on the floor in the living room, her tears dried up, staring blankly ahead.
Miss Olivia, please bear with it. I'm going to clean your wound with hydrogen peroxide now.
But Olivia didn't respond. After waiting for a while, he simply poured it on. The wound bubbled violently, expelling all the dirt inside. Anyone else would at least groan in pain. But Olivia remained wooden, as if the body wasn't hers, her gaze fixed in the direction Lucas had left. Her child's name was Lucas Johnson.
Don't let the wound get wet in the near future, or it will get infected.
Dr. Smith instructed, leaving the medicine with Mrs. Wang before departing. Perhaps moved by the morning's events, Mrs. Wang felt a bit of pity seeing Olivia like this. She softly reminded her.
Young mistress, why do this to yourself? Healing is the most important thing now. Otherwise, even if you have a chance later, you won't have the strength to see the young master.
But I want to see him now. He's my child, yet I've never even held him.
Mrs. Wang helped her upstairs to rest, but she couldn't sleep at all. In a daze, she was startled awake countless times throughout the night, her blanket soaked with cold sweat. Her wounds, left uncovered for ventilation, began to fester in the damp bedding. The next day, when Mrs. Wang found her, Olivia was already burning with fever, her cheeks unnaturally flushed.
Miss Olivia, you need to go to the hospital.
Mrs. Wang, there's no point. Life is meaningless, I might as well.
Don't talk nonsense. Life is long, you need to live well.
Hearing Mrs. Wang's words, Olivia could only muster a bitter smile. The longer her life, the longer she would be separated from Lucas. Olivia had thought she would never see Lucas again in this lifetime. But just 3 days after the ancestral rites, Ethan returned, and Lucas was with him. Standing on the third-floor balcony, Olivia thought she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes to make sure it wasn't a dream and hurried downstairs. But she was too weak. Just getting from the balcony to the door took a lot of effort. Before she could reach the doorknob, the door opened from the outside. She found herself facing Ethan's chest.
Ethan, no, Mr. Johnson, please, let me through.
Ethan grabbed her arm, looking at the twisted brown scars on her pale arm and her fever-flushed cheeks, his expression growing darker.
You're burning up like this, and you still want to go somewhere?
She fell silent, afraid that if she said she wanted to see Lucas, Ethan would stop her. But the more silent she was, the angrier Ethan became. He pushed her onto the bed, pinning her down and gripping her chin.
Speak!
I just want to go out.
She thought he would refuse, but Ethan got up and let her go.
Then go out.
Olivia didn't have time to question it. She immediately got up from the bed and stumbled downstairs, afraid Ethan would change his mind and drag her back. For the first time, the 3 flights of stairs seemed like the longest distance in the world to Olivia. It took her a long time to reach the bottom. She saw Lucas standing at the door, her lips trembling with excitement as she softly called his name.
Lucas!
Lucas turned his head at her call, smiled at her, and ran towards her with open arms. She quickly crouched down to welcome him, her excitement evident in her smile. Lucas called her mommy. He knew she was his mommy. But as he got closer, Olivia realized Lucas was looking past her, and that embrace wasn't meant for her. That mommy wasn't for her either. The incident was an accident, but no matter how much Olivia explained, Ethan simply wouldn't believe her.
Why should I believe you?
2 years ago, Olivia had schemed to climb into Ethan's bed, while simultaneously tampering with the brake lines on Sophia's car. She then lured Sophia to the hotel to witness their entanglement. Sophia never made it to the hotel. Her car lost control and plunged into the river, leaving no trace of her body. Olivia cleared herself of suspicion and used that night's outcome to force Mr. Johnson to make Ethan marry her.
Olivia, isn't this position as Mrs. Johnson exactly what you wanted? What right do you have to ask for more now?
Ethan, I haven't seen the child even once since he was born. I'm begging you, just let me see him once. I'll do anything you ask. I carried him for 10 months and gave birth to him. I'm his mother.
Her humble plea only made Ethan angrier. He forced her to meet his gaze.
Anything, you say?
Yes, anything, as long as you let me.
No. Olivia's heart-wrenching scream echoed as the three figures walked further away. Their backs looked like a family, while she was the one who didn't belong. The next day, divorce papers were delivered to Olivia every day. She tore them up in front of the lawyer every time, refusing to answer any questions, only repeating,
I want to see Ethan.
Ethan never showed up, but Sophia did, arranging a meeting with her. The meeting place was a cafe not far from the villa. Olivia didn't hesitate for a moment and headed straight there. When she arrived, Sophia was already waiting, sitting in the farthest corner, waving at Olivia with a cheerful smile.
What would you like to drink? The usual cappuccino?
Sophia handed her the menu. Olivia pushed it away and got straight to the point.
Why did you want to see me? Is it about Lucas?
Sister, haven't you learned your lesson in these 3 years? Ethan was very clear. Why are you still holding on? It's not doing you any good.
Sophia pulled out a divorce agreement from her bag.
Sign it. I'll make sure Ethan gives you enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life.
The black and white words on the paper were glaring. Olivia turned her head away.
I won't divorce him.
Why? You know Ethan loves me. Why are you clinging on?
Because I want my name cleared. Signing now means Ethan goes back to you, and I still take the blame for what happened back then. I even have to give up my child to you. I can't accept that.
If she had to leave this suffocating marriage, she would take Lucas with her. That day at the Johnson residence, Sophia had grabbed her hand and slapped Lucas hard. How could she trust Lucas to stay with such a woman?
All you're doing is making Ethan hate you more. What will you do when it backfires? Honestly, I don't even like Lucas. He's always clinging to me, calling me mom. It's so annoying.
What Olivia longed for was a burden to Sophia, making Olivia clench her fists.
If you don't like Lucas, then give him back to me. I'll take him far away from you and never appear again.
I'd love to, but I can't.
Sophia met Olivia's puzzled gaze with a smile.
You probably don't know, do you? 3 years ago, in that accident, I survived, but my kidneys were damaged. Having Lucas makes things easier.
Olivia's fingers went cold. She looked up at the woman in front of her in disbelief.
How can you do this?
Sophia stood up and poured her coffee on herself.
Don't worry, this is just the beginning. The real show is yet to come. As long as you don't agree to the divorce, I won't stop. I have countless ways to torment you.
As she spoke, she suddenly grabbed the divorce papers on the table and tore them to pieces. When she looked up again, her face was covered in tears.
Sister, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken what you loved.
In the next moment, Ethan was already in front of Sophia, holding her tightly.
Are you okay?
Then he turned angrily to Olivia.
What do you want?
Olivia laughed, her eyes moist.
What did I want? What could I want?
Ethan, don't blame my sister. After 3 years of marriage, it's normal for her to have feelings for you and not want a divorce. I understand.
The overwhelming disgust in Ethan's eyes almost drowned Olivia.
I never loved her.
Even though she had known this all along, hearing it from Ethan's mouth still made Olivia feel like her heart was bleeding. Her steps faltered.
Ethan, I accept that you don't love me. Just give me Lucas, and I'll divorce you and stay far away.
Lucas will never be yours.
Not give him to her? To keep him for Sophia's kidney transplant? Lucas was his biological son too. How could he be so heartless?
Ethan! Do you have any humanity? Lucas calls you dad, and you treat him like this? If he knew, he would hate you.
Let him know his biological mother is a criminal, then he should hate me.
Ethan said, holding Sophia as they walked out. After a few steps, they suddenly heard a thud behind them, and Ethan's steps halted. Olivia was kneeling on the ground, her voice trembling.
Ethan, I beg you, spare Lucas. He's too young for a transplant.
Blame it on him for being born to you. The thought of your blood running through his veins disgusts me. Olivia, I want to rid myself of everything related to you.
The whole world spun 180 degrees, plunging her into an abyss. Like a walking corpse, she returned home and stared blankly at the dark ceiling, only to receive a call from Sophia.
Olivia, I've changed my mind. You can take the child.
Really? Where are you? I'll come get him now.
She no longer dared to hope for Ethan's love, but the child was her last obsession. Following the address Sophia gave, Olivia went to an old house by the sea and found Sophia and the sleeping Lucas in a cold storage room.
Lucas!
She rushed forward, holding Lucas tightly, but no matter how she called, he wouldn't wake up.
Stop shouting. He took sleeping pills. He won't wake up for a while.
Sleeping pills! How could you do this? He's so young, sleeping pills could be dangerous.
So what? He's not my child.
With that, she stepped out the door, smiling at the two inside.
Olivia, I've changed my mind. The child is yours now. Enjoy your last moments together.
The cold air made Olivia shiver, and she instantly understood what Sophia meant. Before she could rush to the door, it slammed shut with a heavy thud. Inside and outside the door, heaven and hell. No. Olivia stumbled to the door, ignoring the thick ice on it, and pounded hard.
Sophia, open the door, hurry!
Ethan will never have to see your disgusting face again. You don't know how happy he is.
Was this Ethan's idea? Her hand, pressed against the door, stopped moving and soon froze in place. The cold pierced her bones, but she seemed not to feel it. The footsteps outside gradually faded until there was only silence. In the darkness, her tears froze into ice beads, falling to the ground with a faint sound.
So cold!
Lucas woke up from the cold, crying out in fear at the surrounding darkness.
Lucas, Lucas.
Olivia tried to reach out to hold Lucas, but her hands were already frozen. She pulled hard, tearing her skin, and the pain made her vision go black. The two of them huddled together but couldn't fend off the cold. Lucas's cries gradually weakened, and his body temperature began to drop.
Lucas, get up and move around. Don't fall asleep.
Olivia took off her clothes and wrapped them around Lucas, searching for an exit.
It's so cold here. I want to sleep. I'm so tired.
You can't sleep. If you do, you won't wake up.
For the first time, she was with Lucas like this, yet it was a moment of life and death. The pain in her heart was unbearable, and her tears fell uncontrollably, eventually turning into sobs.
Why are you crying? Does it hurt somewhere? Lucas will blow on it, and it won't hurt anymore.
A 2-year-old child, his limbs numb from the cold, still tried to comfort Olivia with each breath of cold air.
Blow on it, and it will be better. Does it still hurt?
Lucas, it's my fault. It's all my fault.
Olivia was on the verge of breaking down. She hugged Lucas and went to the door, knocking and kicking.
Is anyone there? Open the door, please. Let us out. I can go, but don't let him.
Don't cry, don't cry. Someone will come to open the door soon.
Then he hugged her neck.
Before they come, I'll sleep for a while. I'm so tired.
No, you can't sleep, Lucas. Talk to me, don't sleep, please.
Despite Olivia's continuous calls, Lucas's eyelids gradually closed. In the darkness, she couldn't see, but she heard Lucas softly call her.
Mommy, it doesn't hurt.
This time, he called her. Olivia held Lucas in her arms, not speaking anymore. The coldness in her heart grew, and it felt like she was holding a block of ice. No more tears came, she just sat there quietly. If they were to go, they would go together. But the warehouse door was opened. A worker, who came for the monthly inspection, was startled by what he saw inside. The woman, covered in frost, walked out stiffly, holding a child in her arms. The child had fallen into an eternal sleep, his small hands still clutching the woman's clothes. Clutching the last bit of attachment. That attachment took a few steps forward and then collapsed to the ground, fainting but still protecting the child in her arms. Seeing the woman before him, covered in frost and stained with blood, the worker was momentarily shocked before calling for an ambulance. Olivia suffered extensive frostbite but miraculously survived, though Lucas was gone. She handled the entire funeral alone, staring at the small coffin for a whole day and night, surrounded by the scent of burning paper money and incense.
Is it dark down there? Is it cold? Don't worry, Mommy will join you soon.
She glanced at the enlarged photo.
I promise.
Olivia went to the beach that day, not far from the burnt remains of the old house. After the incident, the house inexplicably caught fire, leaving nothing behind. She didn't need to guess what had happened. Smiling, she called Ethan on a video call. Ethan had called her many times in the past few days, but she hadn't answered any of them. Olivia didn't know how to face someone indirectly responsible for a death.
Olivia, where are you? Where's Lucas?
He's gone, Ethan. Today, I'm calling to say goodbye.
What goodbye? Where are you? Tell me, I'll come to you.
These past few days, I've been filled with hate. Why didn't I pass away with Lucas that day, or why wasn't it me who left?
Answer me, where are you?
Ethan got into his car, repeatedly asking her.
I liked you since I was a child, for over 10 years. My heart was small, only big enough for you. But I never received your affection. That accident made me Mrs. Johnson, but it also led me step by step into an abyss. Now, I'm almost at the bottom.
She pulled a dagger from her bag.
Lucas said Daddy told him that if you blow on the wound, it won't hurt. Ethan, does blowing on a broken heart help? Or should I cut it out, so it won't hurt anymore?
She had nothing left. What was the point of living?
You never believed me from the beginning. I loved you, never played any tricks. You never saw my true heart. Now, you'll never see it again. I wish you and Sophia a long life together, childless and alone.
A gust of wind blew, lifting Olivia's hair and hiding the cold glint of the knife, but it also made Ethan realize she was at the beach.
Olivia, wait until I get there. Wait for me.
He frantically started the car, speeding towards her. But on the other end, Olivia had already plunged the knife into her heart. The intense pain made her laugh. At least she was getting closer to Lucas.
Ethan, I hate you.
The phone fell to the ground, and she leaned back, falling off the cliff into the sea, creating a huge splash. The small area of the sea turned red, then was washed away by the waves. She slowly closed her eyes, sinking to the bottom. Olivia was in critical condition for 2 days before she was out of danger. When she woke up, she was silent, refusing to eat, and stared blankly at the ceiling like a soulless doll. Ethan found Dr. Smith, who was treating Olivia, and swallowed hard.
What's wrong with Olivia?
Hearing Olivia's name, a flicker of emotion crossed Dr. Smith's eyes.
Who are you to her?
Husband.
Lung cancer. Late stage.
Ethan's mind went blank, his throat tightened, and he couldn't utter a word. Late-stage lung cancer. How could it be late-stage lung cancer? He didn't know how he made it to Olivia's room. Just as he was about to enter, he heard a familiar voice.
Sister, do you want to know where Lucas's ashes are?
Ethan's brows furrowed deeply. Sophia? What is she doing here? Olivia stared at Sophia, her eyes red.
Where are Lucas's ashes?
Don't rush. Crawl under my legs and bark like a dog, and I'll give you Lucas's ashes. How about that?
Sophia spread her legs and pointed to her crotch, her pretty face full of malice. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, almost unable to believe that this was the same kind and pure Sophia. And how did Lucas's ashes end up with her? He was about to step in when he saw Olivia slowly crawl off the bed, kneel before Sophia, crawl under her legs, and bark twice. He retracted his foot, feeling a heavy weight on his heart.
Where are Lucas's ashes?
Thrown into the sea. That little child was just as annoying as you.
The light in Olivia's eyes vanished. She collapsed to the ground, trembling.
Sophia, Lucas was your nephew. Why did you do that to him?
He wasn't my nephew. He was just another child born to a woman like you. Do you want to know why I said the car accident was your doing?
Ethan's body stiffened. Could it be that Olivia wasn't responsible for the accident?
Because you're a brat. Your mother was the third party in my parents' marriage. My mother didn't blame her, but she framed my mother, making her spend over 10 years in prison. And I actually called her mom for so many years. It's disgusting.
You're crazy. If you weren't Mom's biological daughter, how could she treat you so well?
My mother and I did a DNA test. She told me everything herself. You're just as shameless as your mother. You knew I liked Ethan, but you still seduced him. Do you know how much it hurt to see him smile at you?
Olivia was stunned, her anger and hatred turning into shock. Until now, she had never thought that she and Sophia were half-sisters. But she refused to believe her mother was a third party.
I've wanted to get rid of you so many times. If you were gone, I could live happily with Ethan. But why is your life so tough? I locked you and the child in the cold storage. He didn't make it, but you survived.
The woman was no longer the gentle and delicate person she used to be. Her eyes were filled with malice, and her words were as cold as ice, completely different from the Sophia Ethan remembered. His back was tense, his chest felt like it had been pierced by a sharp knife, bleeding profusely, the pain excruciating. Sophia had framed Olivia with the car accident, caused Lucas's demise, and repeatedly tried to harm Olivia. Yet, he had misunderstood and humiliated Olivia time and again. His eyes were filled with shame and regret, his handsome face burning with embarrassment, but his limbs were cold, as if soaked in winter ice.
What have I done?
He stood at the door in a daze, his legs feeling like they were filled with lead. He wanted to go in, but he couldn't move. He was suddenly afraid to see the hatred and disgust in Olivia's eyes. Ethan stood at the door, his mind in turmoil, memories of Olivia lying in a pool of blood, declaring her hatred for him, flashing through his mind, making his chest feel tight. The incident was an accident, but no matter how much Olivia explained, Ethan just wouldn't believe her.
Why should I believe you?
2 years ago, Olivia had schemed to climb into Ethan's bed while simultaneously tampering with the brake lines on Sophia's car. She then deliberately lured Sophia to the hotel to witness their entanglement. However, Sophia never made it, her car lost control and plunged into the river, leaving no trace of her body. Olivia not only cleared herself of suspicion but also used that night's outcome to force Mr. Johnson to make Ethan marry her.
Olivia, isn't this position as Mrs. Johnson exactly what you wanted? What right do you have to ask for more now?
Olivia forced back her tears.
Ethan, I haven't seen the child even once since he was born. I'm begging you, just let me see him once. I'll do anything you ask. I carried him for 10 months and gave birth to him. I'm his mother.
Her humble plea only made Ethan angrier. He forced her to meet his gaze.
Anything, you say?
Yes, anything, as long as you let me.
Ethan, where are we going?
His grip was too strong, and it hurt her. She felt wronged, he used to be so gentle, never treating her like this.
Didn't you say your kidneys were failing? Let's get you a new one.
Olivia's pupils contracted, her eyes filled with panic and guilt. She struggled desperately.
No, Ethan, my kidneys will be fine with some rest.
Ignoring her struggles, Ethan dragged her to the internal medicine department. Seeing Dr. Smith in the operating room made Olivia even more frantic. She tried to run, but Ethan pulled her back.
Get her a new kidney.
Dr. Smith glanced at Olivia, hesitant to speak.
Is there a problem?
Olivia shook her head frantically at Dr. Smith, but he hesitated and then spoke.
Mr. Johnson, I'll be honest. Miss Olivia's body is perfectly healthy. Last time, I took her money and was threatened by her family to fake the results.
He had been having nightmares about the other Miss Olivia covered in blood, unable to eat or sleep. Saying this out loud felt like a relief, even if it meant he could never be a doctor again.
Perfectly healthy?
Dr. Smith nodded. Ethan clenched his fists, veins bulging on his forehead. So, he had been played by Olivia all along? Olivia collapsed to the ground, her body limp. It was over, completely over this time.
Are there many patients with kidney failure in the hospital?
Dr. Smith didn't understand why he was asking but nodded.
Quite a few. Many people could return to normal life with a kidney transplant, but either they can't afford it or they can't find a match. It's rare to find someone who has both the money and a matching kidney.
Does her kidney match any of those patients?
Dr. Smith nodded. Olivia had insisted on following the proper procedures to avoid suspicion, so all the matching tests had been done. Ethan sneered and looked away.
She likes kidney transplants so much. Let's swap her kidney with one of those patients. I'll cover the costs, and I'll take responsibility for any consequences.
Ethan, you can't do this. I admit I told some harmless lies, but the car accident 2 years ago was real. I almost died,
Ethan didn't want to see or hear her anymore. He kicked her away mercilessly and strode out. Ethan sat against the wall outside Olivia's hospital room, his usually immaculate hair in disarray, looking unusually disheveled. When he saw her come out in the twilight, a glimmer of light appeared in his otherwise dull eyes, and he stumbled towards her.
I thought you wouldn't see me.
He wanted to hug her, but stopped half a meter away.
I wasn't planning to.
Olivia handed him the divorce papers and a pen, already turned to the page needing his signature.
Sign it.
Sunlight glinted off her elegant handwriting, casting a golden glow. Ethan looked at her. Apart from being thinner and paler, she hadn't changed much in 2 years, but the admiration in her eyes was gone. This was all his doing.
I don't want anything. Sign it, and we'll go to the Civil Affairs office for the divorce certificate tomorrow.
Olivia pushed the papers closer and placed the pen in his hand. Ethan's hand trembled as he held the pen, asking in a low, humble voice.
No matter what I do to make amends, is there no chance for us?
The child's life stands between us, and all the things you did to me. Do you think we can go back?
Olivia's long, thick lashes cast a shadow over her eyes, hiding her emotions.
Ethan, a broken mirror, even if pieced together, still has cracks.
Ethan took the divorce papers, her reflection in his pupils.
Olivia, if Lucas hadn't passed away, would we have had a chance?
Silence. After a moment, Olivia said.
In this world, there are no ifs.
If there were, she wished she had never fallen in love with him.
Even if there's not much time left, you still want a divorce?
Ethan's words were painfully slow, his grip on the divorce papers tightening. He still didn't want to divorce her.
It's precisely because there's not much time left that I want a divorce. I don't want to go to another place as Mrs. Johnson, it makes me feel uncomfortable.
The undisguised hatred in her eyes pierced Ethan's heart. He never knew words could be more painful than any poison. When he had said those hurtful words before, had she felt this way too?
Sign it.
Olivia didn't want to drag this out any longer. Ethan removed the pen cap, his hand trembling as he signed his name on the divorce papers, then paused.
As long as you receive proper treatment in the hospital, I'll sign the divorce papers and go to the civil affairs office with you.
Olivia looked at him, then let out a mocking laugh and turned back to her room. She would never again accept any of his threats. It wasn't until her figure disappeared from sight that Ethan looked down at the divorce papers in his hand. He should have been happy not to divorce, but he couldn't feel any joy. The incident was an unfortunate accident, but no matter how much Olivia tried to explain, Ethan simply wouldn't believe her.
Why should I believe you?
2 years ago, Olivia had schemed to enter Ethan's life by dubious means. She tampered with the brake lines on Sophia's car and lured her to the hotel to witness an entanglement. Sophia never made it to the hotel. Her car lost control and plunged into the river, leaving no trace of her body. Olivia managed to clear herself of suspicion and used that night's outcome to force Mr. Johnson to make Ethan marry her.
Olivia, isn't this position as Mrs. Johnson exactly what you wanted? What right do you have to ask for more now?
Ethan, I haven't seen the child even once since he was born. I'm begging you, just let me see him once. I'll do anything you ask.
Anything, you say?
Yes, anything, as long as you let me.